You're watching or listening to Strangers in Space, and God knows for how long, we're going to be talking about the Interstellar Song Contest and other things as well, of course, so you don't have to. Hi, I'm JR.
Hi, I'm Matthew.
Hi, I'm Mark.
Hi, I'm Luke.
And I'm John.
Very good, guys. Very
Very
good.
satisfying.
It's good.
Right, there is a lot to talk about, I guess. And because Luke doesn't want to be around for any talk about what might or might not be coming up next week and the week after, either in terms of spoilers, which none of us have
Well, you
spoilers
say this,
really.
JR, but honestly, I'll listen to a stranger's review and you'll just say something off the bat, which which is from 3 episodes in the future. So, so you go, oh no, it's not a spoiler, but it is.
Can I just point something out? Dylan just posted on WhatsApp after we described the episode, and he just said, "I read about it. It sounds fucking dreadful." So Dylan's just posted a 7-word review on.
I'll put him down for an 8 out of 10 then, shall I?
Yeah.
He should have watched it first. That's all I can say.
Not
So,
sure it would have been any better, but
but Luke, the thing is, all the spoilers that we had, all the things that we'd heard, were for things up to week 6.
Okay, well, I'll
So I
play
don't.
around. The
You
first sign of trouble, and I'm out of it.
All right. Well, I was going to say, but okay, so Luke may or may not leave the call early. I mean, there will be speculation, but the speculation will be based only on things that we've seen up to this point now.
Okay.
I think, and arguments that we've had on air, Matt.
Still not going to be a thing. It's still an
It's
in-joke. It's not going to
it's
turn out to be a major plot point. It's just Juno Dawson running with the in-joke. That's all I'm saying.
okay. It's not got anything to do with bending reality or anything like that.
It could have. If it is, then RTD hasn't seeded that particular point with.
He seeded it across about 6 or 7 or 8 episodes.
No, he presented a brief comic interlude with Newton about 2 years ago, and then it turned into a running gag with a word that sort of dissipated at the beginning of this season, and now it's come back a bit
Now, that
in this
word is
episode.
one of the symptoms. There are lots
Oh,
of other
I'm not
symptoms.
suggesting that there isn't going to be a reality bending thing, but Mavity itself is not going to be pivotal.
No, it's going to be a symptom of the reality bending. I've been saying this from the start. Mavity itself is not important, but Mavity is an example of a symptom of something that will turn out to be important.
Okay.
Shall we
yes,
talk
Russell T.
about-
Davis. That's what it's a symptom of.
Yeah, maybe. But we'll come back to it because we'll have a section at the end where we talk about Susan, the Rani, everything else.
So there will be spoilers.
I don't, but that's not spoilers for the future, is it? That's
No.
stuff that's
No,
happened in this
no.
episode. And from this episode, I think we can extrapolate that certain things will be ongoing into the next two. For example, he has a line at the end about Susan where he says, I can't remember exactly what the line was, but it was something along the lines of, I don't know why she's popped into my head, but there must be a reason for it, which leads you to believe, oh, if he says that directly, there must be a reason for it, then we are going to find out what the reason is. So Susan may or may not be back, but again, I think the appearance of Susan has been deliberately seeded in this episode as a pointer towards something that will prove to be important next week. So
Well,
I
I think
think
she
that's
says find me, doesn't she?
yeah, does she? Yeah,
Yeah,
see
I think so.
there is stuff going on with
That's the
Susan,
season
but
3 arc that's no longer going to happen.
It's also different from last year where they just mentioned her name. Getting Caroline Ford to actually come in and do a bit, that's going to be, I mean, that's
They're
not
going
just
to find her in a Lime Grove studio
yeah.
in 1964, mothballed.
I mean, she's like what 90 or something. They can't have got her to do
Oh,
much more. So
80
they'll
odd, I think.
They'll get her to sit in a chair somewhere like Nick Courtney in that Sarah Jane Smith adventure, but he's definitely going to come back.
or potentially this
Well,
could.
my name's not Mavity Barber.
But what I mean is, if she does come back, I can't see her doing more than a minute, couple of minutes. I can't see her being a very big part of what comes up. But
As she cartwheels into the room and like, does a few backflips. And
that's where the
she's
Disney money
Karate
went.
chops, Anita Dobson.
Angela Rippon like yoga she's been doing for the last 20 years. And then she acts well, which is even more extraordinary.
Does anybody know how long we've been going? We've buried the lead. We should say whether we enjoyed the episode. Let's go round in a circle. Usually I go last, I'm going first. I enjoyed the hell out of that. Luke?
Yeah, absolutely loved it. It's great.
Matt? Yeah. I think it might be one of the best Doctor Who episodes I've ever seen. And I'm
Mark's face.
in a bit of a quandary because I've been giving them sort of 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. I really liked last week's. I really liked the Lucky Day one, but and this one I think is on the par with those certainly.
Yeah. John?
I enjoyed it. I'm not sure it was a good episode, but I enjoyed it.
Oh no, I'll come back to that point. Mark?
You look. I think it's a mess. I think it's a bit of a mess. So I enjoyed parts of it, and I was actively annoyed by other bits of it.
Were the bits that you were annoyed at sort of Eurovision bits or RTD bits, continuity bits?
So the RTD stuff mostly. I think.
Yeah.
But actually, to be honest, the Eurovision stuff we're burying. It's how it deals with. So look, right. Let me because I can't sort of cover this in a kind of like. Look, I'm going to dive into this. It's an unfortunate circumstance that this comes out just after Andor has finished, and just after Israel have qualified once again, and there is now another discussion about whether or not we should boycott Eurovision because of their treatment of Gaza and etc. 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 So all of that kind of inflects this episode and how it deals with terrorism and how. Crucially, how the Doctor deals with terrorism, and I don't really like how it handles.
It's
that
kablam, isn't it? It's
kind
kablam.
of, yes.
It's the same issue that people had with kablam, in that the terrorist is the bad guy, but the cause isn't necessarily a bad cause. But by making the terrorist the bad guy, what you've done is said, right, these are on the side of good and these are on the side of bad. And thus the cause falls into the marker at the side of bad, whether you think the cause is bad or not, and clearly the cause isn't. I don't think that you can properly take that away from this episode. I think that's the problem with making something that's textured and nuanced, is that if you want to look at it in black and white, it falls that way. But I don't think that ledger really exists. I thought the same about Kablam.
I thought the same. Almost the same as Mark, except I didn't think it was unfortunate that it happened just before a Eurovision Song Contest where Israel has got through and there isn't a Palestinian entry. I thought it was appropriate that happened because it presented the ideal of what the Eurovision Song Contest should be, which is a way of building bridges between nations. And they present the terrorist as a bad person because he's trying to kill 3 trillion people. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
And then they
I think that's fair. I do think that's fair.
Then they present the actual protest as being through art and creativity at the end to kind of display empathy. So it is idealistic. I don't think it is a Kablam thing. I think it concludes with the right, if slightly idealistic, message.
I think my main issue with it is turning the Doctor into Jack Bauer. Now, I love 24, right? Even though I'm a kind of, hand-wringing lefty liberal, there is something quite, escapist
cathartic?
And quite cathartic. Cathartic's a good word, about watching Jack Bauer, pull some wiring out of a lamp and torturing a terrorist. I don't want my Doctor to do that. And I think...
Yeah, this is my big issue as well.
But don't you think that what we're essentially watching is somebody's literary agent hypothesis, and that's not actually the Doctor? This is the Doctor from Invasion of Time or Mind Warp, and his anger there at the end of this episode, because don't forget, that's the second time this year he's done that. He did it 2 weeks ago, was it? So this is becoming a theme.
Like this,
the Doctor is behaving unlike the Doctor, and next week we'll find out why.
But no, I don't think that's it. I think the Conrad thing the Conrad thing works because it's him defending Ruby, even though he can't be there to be Ruby's mate, weirdly. Now this, I thought at first it was, because he thinks Belinda's dead. So it's not really about the 300 trillion people. It's about, you've killed my mate and I'm very, very angry. And then it's like, actually, no, it wasn't that, babes. It was, I got triggered because of Gallifrey, innit? Anyway, that's fine. And also, all these people lining up to tell him how wonderful he is after he's just tortured this guy. It's all very.
I like my doctor to have a bit of bite. Like I don't
mind my doctor having a bit
because we
of
get
bite.
so many stories where he's just a bit placid and a bit nothing. And I know the whole point of Doctor Who is he doesn't use weapons, but it's nice to see him.
I'm telling that to the Invasion of Time.
But I agree with God help me. I agree with JR that it's the way it's presented in this episode is those moments of the Doctor being angry are presented as aberrations in this episode. So they're sort of commented on by other characters, going, "Oh my God, you're really angry."
They're commented on by Belinda.
What's going on, and it sort of tries to explain it away, or he tries to explain it away. I was triggered by the deaths of Time Lords, which is possible, but I think there's something weirder going on that. Either this is a traditional actual, and we saw this with Jodie Whittaker as well. The Doctor is an actor and is got sort of concealing not a darker side, but a kind of a more sort of emotionally and morally neutral side behind a kind of this camp sort of jolly carapace.
Is it actually interrogating?
And as I'm talking,
but just
Dylan Reese is continuing to comment on the episode. He hasn't said. Some of his comments I can't actually read out loud because my God.
But very quickly on Mark's point, Belinda's the one who comments on it. She's the only one who knows him. So she's the only one who can.
But that's all fine. But it's all the people lining up. Oh, Doctor, you're so wonderful. Oh, I'd do anything for you.
Oh yeah, well, I think
no, I think
he saved 3 trillion people.
That was I'd like to shag him. Yeah, so would I. Yeah, but you're my boyfriend. But you're my boyfriend. But I'd like to shag him.
I'd like to shag him after I've helped him torture a guy half to death. Sure, I mean, why not?
Whatever.
You do you, babes.
But given this theme is about storytelling, is it interrogating the kind of stories you tell about the Doctor? Is it interrogating, all Patrick Troughton's actions when he just sent Ice Warrior fleets off into the sun and
they've all
destroy the aliens without any sort of kind of sympathy? I don't know.
I think what Juno Dawson has done here that is really, really intelligent and makes this a much better episode than it probably feels like when you're just sort of taking it in at first, is she has taken a lot of elements, a lot of stuff. And yeah, the stuff at the end, that'll be the stuff that RTD added. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the stuff up to the song at the end. All the stuff up to there, basically, I think is essentially her. Even the stuff with Susan felt to me like she integrated that rather than RTD put it in, because she took stuff like, I've got to get Susan in here and somehow flag up the whatever it is about Susan that's going to be happening. It felt to me like she put that in. She's taken RTD's theme. RTD's theme this year is what happens when incels come to power. There's no question of that now. We've had at least 3, if not 4, maybe 5 even of the 6 episodes we've had this year have been about essentially that thing, about disaffected young men, disaffected young white men who've decided that they need to take matters into their own hands. That's what the stories have been about. And she's taken that theme too. She's taken the Eurovision Song Contest. She's taken all the stuff that surrounds the Eurovision Song Contest that we've talked about already, that you've said about music and creativity being a power for healing and it being a power for bringing people together. She's taken that. She's taken jokes about Ryland's teeth. She's taken jokes about Graham Norton's life and death and all this kind of stuff. She's taken everything else, she's thrown it all together, and she's made all these disparate ideas into a thoroughly coherent whole, I think. And yeah, there's some weird stuff in there, but I think there's deliberately weird stuff in there because there's been deliberately weird stuff in every week. I think that's part of the theme of the series, to have deliberately weird stuff in there. I think it's a way better arc than we had last year, because last year it was just, there's a bit of rain and there's a signpost that you can't see. This year there is much more interesting stuff going on. And actually, I am even more excited now than I was. What was it, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, when we said we were excited, or 2 weeks ago when we said we were excited for the finale to see where all this was heading. Yeah, sure, RTD can take all these themes and shove them in a bottle and fuck them up the ass, but that's not happened yet. As things stand, I think
Or
that
he
was
could tank it. I would, but anyway.
Yeah, another way of putting it.
I thought it was
we
the,
don't all
the
have to
most.
go Dylan Reese.
Matt did the swear at the start, so I can say what I
Dylan
like
did
now,
the
right?
swearing at the start.
I thought it was the best balanced script of the season.
Yes,
But
100%.
it seemed there was no sort of Belinda wasn't on a B plot. There was no obvious B plots, even though people were split up. It seemed to get the balance right of Eurovision and Doctor Who and give them both time and not really sacrifice one or the other.
Yeah, yeah.
And it integrated them all very well. And it had all these other, extra little twists to shove in there as well.
I had one issue with it, and so let's get that out of the way. I don't think Belinda had much to do or much agency, and I think the sort of first 20 minutes, or the 20 minutes after the Doctor goes off into space, kind of sacrificed her integrity a bit for
I
the
don't
sake
think
of the
she's had
story.
much to
But
do all season. She's
yeah,
made
yeah.
little impression on me, to be honest.
Well, I think that's probably a fair point. But by the time she's spent this much time with the Doctor, presumably things have been happening off screen as well that we've not seen, because we had a hint of that in what was the fourth episode called? Lucky Day. So she's. I don't think she should have just collapsed as quickly and for as an extended period as she did in this episode. But I think that's a small problem with an episode that otherwise really achieves on everything it sets out to do. I
I
think.
think Belinda needs a Doctor Light episode, because the Doctor Light episode in this series was given over to Ruby.
Yeah.
And so she missed that boat. I think that's why, for me, it feels like she hasn't had. And this Doctor is particularly eclipsing in terms of personality and action and activity. If it was Capaldi, I think she'd possibly have more to bounce off. But this Doctor is kind of like, not a black hole. What's the opposite? A supernova
Well,
of kind of energy. And
he sucks the energy, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He sucks the energy from the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doctor is always the character you have to look at here, and that's just casting the conception of the role at the moment, because Truth Garrett is that type of actor.
Yeah.
You look at it.
Well, and this is why I thought he and Millie were a problem, because I thought she rose up to him, and so they kind of made each other worse in that respect. Whereas with Farada Sethu, I think actually she grounds him a little bit. So
But
it's
I
a shame.
preferred watching Ruby.
Oh, did you?
I think there's an excitement there, and something about her that I like watching compared to Belinda.
See,
But
for
I do
me,
think
those
both
two were very.
companions are written as background characters.
Yeah.
Which is a problem. And it's weird for a Russell T Davies series to do that, because that was his
not
his whole
sure.
thing was always like, the companions are the heart of the show, and
But he said that, but he always did make them kind of subservient to the Doctor, didn't he? Look at how Billy Piper is. Oh, have I got permission to go back in time to see my dad? Oh, can we do it again? And that was throughout the whole of Billy's thing. There was that kind of deference to the Doctor in that way. So I think Russell talked up a good companion, but actually the companions didn't get treated that well. Martha got treated terribly.
yeah.
And it was only Donna, because I think Donna wouldn't have felt as strong as she did if it wasn't for the performance of Catherine Tate.
Yeah,
Maybe.
that's
But then you
fair.
argue that with Rose, and then Bad Wolf is not that at all. That Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways, because she explicitly disregards what he's doing. She is making her own mind up there. I
For
think
sure.
it changes
Yeah,
with
but
the
you're talking
Tennant
about
dynamic.
yeah.
But
you're
the
talking
Tennant
about
dynamic's different, because I think Tennant is kind of similar in a way, because Eccleston is an intense actor, but he doesn't dominate the screen like, say, the energy of Tennant does. I think Tennant's Doctor is the kind of comparison I give to Gatman's Doctor.
Oh, I think he is. Yeah. But look at Rose again. So Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways is like 2 episodes out of 27 that she's in.
But that's the point of her first whole series.
But then you come afterwards and you get to the Satan Pit or the Impossible Planet, and it's, oh, Doctor, it's all gone wrong, hasn't it? Can we get married if we get out of this? Can we go
I
and live
don't
in
know.
a
She does shoot
mortgaged
Toby's
house?
head out of the fucking rocket.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean? But what I mean is he talks up how great the companions are. but actually the writing of the companions, there's this weird juxtaposition between, yeah, they are strong people who are learning from the Doctor, and yeah, they still whine and want to get married and go and live in a semi-detached mortgaged house.
I mean, it's kind of the nature of the program that there's again an inescapable mavity about how these characters have to be in a certain form to make the format of the series work. They
But
can't
this is,
they can't
yeah,
just like take over.
but look at,
Otherwise,
but look at,
you end up almost. I mean, the closest it's got is Clara in the Cyberman story, where there was a brief sort of gag that she might be the Doctor in
yeah.
disguise, and that kind of sort of worked as a one-off thing, but it almost, any more than that, and suddenly the series like breaks down into chaos.
But I think the problem with RTD is that he doesn't stick with the development. So Rose develops across that first series and becomes the stronger person with more agency in the two-part finale. And then in the Christmas invasion, the Doctor's in bed, so she just goes off and cries.
But
And she spends
this episode was great,
35
though, wasn't
minutes
it?
crying.
Yeah, I mean, this episode, Disney money
Oh,
on screen.
well, are we going to talk about Disney money?
Well, it did. There
Given
was
the-
there's a little bit in the middle where they were in corridors, and you thought, I really hope they get out of the corridor soon. But apart from that,
I thought
it looked
yeah,
pretty
looked really good.
bloody good.
But
Yeah,
also, what I'm really enjoying, and I really enjoy in general Doctor Who, is the contrast from week to week. So last week's was pretty much inside a barber shop in Cardiff / Nigeria, and then suddenly this is in this kind of quite impressive impressively CGI'd space station with a few really good set pieces. The moment where they're all kind of
Oh, yeah.
wrapped
Oh
together
my God, gobsmacking, wasn't it?
was really good, really well done. But it's
And-
a
and
contrast with last
really
week, and then
quick.
last week's contrast with the week before.
It happened so soon in and was so like in the moment dark. I was like, wow, we're going here straight away.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
because we did. In the publicity, there's all this talk about there's going to be 4 songs. Murray Gold's written 4 songs. And you're thinking, okay, we'll get 3 songs, then there'll be like, a story, and then we'll have another song at the end. And it's like, you're sitting there quite happily waiting for 3 songs. Shit, everyone's dead.
Yeah, it was brilliant. And it was a real spectacle way to kill everyone.
Yeah.
It's not
That
kill
was,
anyone.
yeah, that was amazing. That was, in terms of iconic Doctor Who moments, that one's going to go down.
And
surely.
the Ryland gag, I think you're absolutely, whoever's been speaking, probably JR, unfortunately, but I think Luke as well. The gags, the balance that Juno Dawson's managed to make between the comedy and the drama, and the fact that actually it seems to all tie together, all the solution, and it all sort of interlocks. It's almost sort of Terrence Dicks levels of sort of plot mechanics. Works. but with actual jokes that I found funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was
don't get me
laughing.
wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I think genuinely thought Rylan and Graham Norton were 2 of the best people in it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like that kind of, it felt, like in RTD Who, there's always like the kind of montage of sort of talk, like personalities that you all know and love, and it always feels a bit
And
slightly
Whittaker.
removed from the story, you know. But I think this actually worked really well, and to use sort of Graham Norton as the kind of exposition device
At the
end was a fun way to do that.
And he
Quite
was so
sinister. He went like
Yeah.
It actually made you, because he is an actor. I mean, he's been an actor in the past.
Father Ted.
Yeah.
But when it kind of sort of goes down that kind of the world's spoiler alert, the world's been, not spoiler alert because we've already seen it, but the characters haven't seen it. The world's been destroyed. That was really effective.
Mm-hmm.
He was great. He absolutely knew what was required of him and delivered it brilliantly.
Yeah.
And so, and he doesn't. I don't think he goes sinister. I think he just knows, and so he just lets the sinister happen in the words. Really,
They were
great.
the best songs of the era as well. Even the Doopity Doop song was better
I
than
love
what
that
we've
bit
had
as
so
well. That
far.
bit was
That
great.
was
I was like
great.
that felt like a properly kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like I like Doctor Who when it kind of goes weird, and
Yeah.
and that kind of the disconnect between like 100,000 people are dead and floating in space, and here's a comedy caterpillar singing a really catchy pop duet. I was like, yeah, this is fun.
And it's
And
playing
it's
in the
someone who
background through a
understands-
really
yeah.
dramatic
Yeah.
scene. It
And
was
it's
great.
someone who understands Eurovision as well, because you do get that shit in Eurovision.
Yeah,
yeah, I thought they all sounded like Eurovision songs.
Totally.
And they
Yeah,
had
the
fun.
last one, the
They
one at
had
the
fun.
end.
They had fun with things in the background and posters
Yeah.
and stuff. So this is full of like, I don't like Eurovision Song Contest particularly. I find it really depressing.
Me neither.
But you know, everything worked. All the in jokes and the posters in the background and the costumes and even the Bucks Fizz moment.
It felt like they
works.
actually wanted to make this and not that they had to make it, which is what I get sometimes with RTD2 Who.
It's
Yeah.
not just a gimmick, is the
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it was
not
made
like
with. It
Bad
was made.
Wolf, maybe, in retrospect.
Well, this was all made with love, wasn't it?
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
could feel the love coming off the screen. Rylan was great as well. He didn't have
Yeah.
much dramatic to do, but everything that he did have that was dramatic to do, you didn't think, oh, this is a presenter who's doing acting. You just thought, yeah, he's just there. He's just being
They
that.
gave him gags, which is
Yeah.
what he's
Yeah.
good at. And yeah, perfect.
Well, and at the end, they gave him a nice little bit of, well, I don't know if it was a gag, and I can't remember exactly what the line was, but it was a proper moment. They gave him a proper moment at the end. It wasn't like a moment where you just kind of go, oh, it's all gone a bit stupid. But he had, when he comes back, and I guess it's a gag, but he comes out of the machine and he has a proper moment of, oh, this is the episode putting itself back together in the aftermath sort of thing. And it only worked because it was him, is what I
Yeah.
mean, I guess.
I thought I
Yeah.
was going to hate that resolution. It's just like, okay, we're just going to fix every one of them. But then they did it quite fun and well. And even that was Eurovision coming out of the box and everything. So it sort of won me over.
It's
Because
just
it
another one
could
where
it could
nobody
have been the
dies.
cubes, it could have been just resurrected everyone very quickly, but it sort of
Mm.
had a bit of style about it that won me over.
And they gave those two guys something to do. So often in 45-minute Doctor Who, you get a bunch of characters who end up with nothing to do. Everybody in this, in the end, everybody in this had things to say and things to do and was part of the exposition and was part of the solution. So,
And very, very conveniently have relevant jobs.
well, yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
fair, but sometimes you think, oh God, they've got such convenient jobs. And then other times you think, oh, the Doctor knows what those two people do, and so he's incorporating that into the solution.
And
Here's another thing, though, on that subject. So you, JR, you've been saying, the theme of this series is all about incels coming to power, and there's absolutely a bit of that. But also, this series has also been about fandom and I'm not just talking about the fans in Lux. I'm talking about last week. What was the Barber if not the kind of mouthpiece and the kind of supporter of the kind of storytelling gods. And Conrad's kind of weird internet sort of troll thing. It's a sort of analog for fandom. This, you've got a Eurovision fan who gets a job designing Eurovision's, computer security system, whatever. So again, there's a kind of element of kind of fandom kind of seeping into this, and there's throughout this series we've had kind of the negatives and the positives and the kind of the redemption that we had with the Barber. I think there's elements of that.
Well, and
playing
Lux,
through-
well, Lux, the fans
Well,
say
obviously
Lux.
Lux, yeah.
Yeah.
it's
I've
fan-
not.
it's fans, but that's emphasizing people who watch creative things, which I think is more appropriate to this because there's clearly, even though the twist wasn't quite it's not the master of the land of fiction yet. But there's clearly, as JR's, God help me, JR said, there's clearly something going on with fiction and warping reality.
It's about creativity breeding creativity.
The other reason I like
Or
the other reason I like the guest.
actually, Matt, let me just finish this point
Okay.
and then but put a pin in what you're saying and come back to it. It's
Okay.
about creativity breeding creativity. Or in terms of the RTD bits of this episode, it's like he's engaged in an AI machine to look at Twitter, see what fans are obsessing about, and just spaff it all onto the screen in the last 5 minutes.
JR, you're just trying to come up with a justification for the existence of Unleashed, aren't you?
Matt.
The other reason I quite like the guests, the extra characters in this, is there were moments when all of them, it was almost a whodunit. There were moments where all of them looked a little bit sinister. There was a time when the medical guy and the technician, they just seemed to know a bit too much about what was going on, and it felt like they could turn all the assistant to the Hannibal singer. There was obviously he had like slight dark sides to him. So they gave them kind of an extra dimension to their character in parts. So
And
it's
also-
not just they were there. It's not just they were there to fulfill plot mechanics, which they were brilliantly, but also they had sort of edges to their character. They were personalities.
And in some ways, it was Voyage of the Damned done well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
Or-
how have we got
God,
this
now I've
far?
got to
No
say
one's
which
mentioned
one I
Fort of
like
Doomsday.
more. And I
Or
don't
as,
agree with all of that.
Dylan commented, the Diddy trial is less harrowing than this shit on WhatsApp. So his commentary of an episode he hasn't seen but just read about, his commentary continues. I want
I
to
don't think
smash
he's
my
happy.
TV just reading about it. He says, please God, cancel this effing show.
Does he say effing? Because you've already broken the swear
He
barrier.
doesn't say effing. He does say, no, I'm not going to read that one. I can't read it. I'm not
This
gonna read that.
works.
Because
Oh.
that's genuinely offensive, and I think that's one that he probably should delete from WhatsApp.
I'm going to read it before he does.
I'm just, yeah.
Oh, you
I've
know
got-
the one that I'm not going to read out because I actually I think that's not just rude language. I think that's just a little bit cruel. He should watch it.
but accurate.
It is quite funny, though.
It
It
is
is quite
accurate.
funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, this isn't fun for people to. You know.
But I
I've
genuinely think it's one these last few weeks. I genuinely don't understand why people aren't on board.
No, I think it's
I
fair.
try
There are-
obviously people could argue with me and convince me why they're not on board, but unless you've not been watching it,
I wouldn't
like
be able to convince you
Philip
why I'm
Morris
not on board. I've not been into the season like I was last year. I think maybe a
Right.
bit of goodwill gone, but like objectively, The Well and Lucky Day, I wasn't into last week at all. But objectively, the stories have genuinely been better. This is the first one where I was like immersed, and I was like, oh yeah, we should have started with this.
I think because they're different each week. So you weren't into last week's, but last week's was so different from The Well and Lucky Day.
Yeah.
Lucky Day was different.
But I
from The
think
Well,
season
and
one
this
tried
week's
to
was
do
different
that. It
from-
just didn't do it as good.
Yeah.
But I was more invested with the.
I tell you what it feels like, because every episode this year has corresponded with the episode that was on in its slot last year. Like Lux is almost a remake of Devil's Cord, and even down to last year having the Bridgerton cosplay, and this year it's the Eurovision cosplay in the same
It's
slot.
the big camp party before the finale.
It's like they've photocopied Series 1 in colour, but Series 1 was in black and white.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a
I
good
mean,
way.
for me,
But I think also though, if we can talk about Mrs. Flood,
Oh, I'm saving that. Oh,
well,
you
because I'm going to
bastards.
seek from this into that. So
Segue.
I think the
hang
problem that
hang on, stop the podcast.
Are we
I-
doing a
am I-
post credits here?
Can we just repeat what is it? It is segue, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
segue whatever.
Thank you. Thank God. Okay.
It's one of those
That
things where
wasn't
you've
a
seen the
Scottish-
word
a
written down
Scottish
so many
dialect-
times.
Dialect thing. Yeah.
Anyway, I think the reason I've loved last week. I really enjoyed The Well, and I really enjoyed Lucky. Well, I enjoyed Lucky Day, but not as much as some people who thought it was, Doctor Who doing adolescence. Come on, calm down. I think there is an element though of this series and last series that is kind of it feels on autopilot. Like if you kind of chip away at the kind of the new elements of it and stuff like that, there is a kind of Russell T Davis's greatest hits kind of going on. And I feel like this is Utopia if like all of season 3 had Derek Jacobi as a kindly old man being all
Yeah.
weird and mysterious, and then at the end of it he regenerates into John Sim. Nobody would have been as excited because they're like, oh, is that it? We finally find out who this guy is, and he just turns into somebody else.
Yeah.
I
And
think
here we have, who is this woman? Who's Mrs. Flood? Oh, why does she keep appearing in places? Oh, who's Mrs. Flood? Oh, she's the Rani. Oh, amazing. Oh, and now she's bi-generated, and now she's a kind of groveling lackey to the real Rani. That was a bit of a waste of fucking time, wasn't it?
Also, at the moment where she starts regenerating, I'm like, she says, watch this. This is how it works. This is what's going to happen. And I'm thinking, No, if she's turning into Susan, that's not how it works because it should have been the other way around. So even that moment, there's a dropped ball. So the RTD bits here are
Oh,
definitely
you
the
think the
weakest parts.
regeneration thing was supposed to be sort of teased? Yeah, I never
Yeah,
even kind of.
I didn't get that. I didn't get that.
But
There
you're
was
right.
supposed to
It
be a
probably
twist.
was. There probably was a little element of like, oh, maybe they'll think it's Susan in this brief second.
Yeah, but I think that moment is
I
supposed to.
thought that's where it could go.
Yeah, yeah.
After flashes of Susan, I thought they were going to walk into the TARDIS at the end, and rather than Susan, it'd be Mrs. Flood, and that's who it would be.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think that was deliberate. It felt
yeah, I think
deliberate.
it's
Yeah.
got to be deliberate, surely.
You know where the whole Mrs. Flood thing comes from? It's from that moment in Dimensions in Time where the Rani walks out the Queen Vic. Because what was Anita Dobson at that
Yeah,
moment?
well, yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's it
No,
all comes from.
Perfect.
you're not wrong,
I mean,
John.
it was the only bit of the episode that didn't work for me.
I think it did what it meant to do, though. It had
I
everybody.
think it's an utterly bizarre choice to
Oh,
build up a
utterly.
mystery for 2 seasons that everyone is what
Well, I
feels
was
like
gonna-
everyone's engaged with, and then just confine it to a minute-long
Well,
mid-credits
there are
scene.
all sorts of things that are wrong with
Bonkers.
that. I was going to come back to that later, but
In a mid-credit sequence on the episode.
oh yeah, it's but there are even worse things wrong with, way worse things wrong with that we'll come back to. And now I've lost my train of thought because I was going to say something else about that before we came back to it. Okay, let's just do it then. I've actually got some notes.
Oh Jesus!
Because
Again,
there
there's
was
2 episodes on the trot, for God's sake.
I know I didn't have any notes last week, did
Oh,
I?
there you go. It's 2 out of 3. Still, it's bad.
No, it was
What's
week
happened
one.
to the magic of J.R. Southall?
No, I had Southall, you fucker.
There you go.
I had notes. I had notes for episode 1, so it has been over a month. But I've not got notes so much as just words.
What
to
do
make
the
sure
notes say, JR? Come on.
Well, I want to come back and talk about the Ronnie. One of the notes I've got. Okay, I'm going to do a real left turn here. One of the notes I've got is, so every now and again, and so this is an RTD doing Chibnall thing. RTD wants to make sure that the audience doesn't get left behind. So he'll occasionally put unnecessary bits of dialogue in to remind you of things that you've seen 20 minutes earlier, just in case you were on your phone when it was on 20 minutes earlier. And now you're getting reminded that this thing is important. And so there's an ADR bit where they put a line of ADR dialogue over something to make sure that you're keeping up with the things that you should be keeping up with. But the character who's being ADR'd suddenly walks through the middle of the shot with his mouth firmly shut while his ADR dialogue is going out over the top of him. What? Who did that piece of editing? So the villain gets to say,
This is what happens when you take notes from the episode. I can't remember. I don't know I can't remember what that bit was, and I didn't see it.
I had to rewind. I thought, what did I really just see? What I think I just saw.
Well, what bit was it?
There's just before the end, when it's on like 98%, and just before it's about to go off, and he's like,
Oh,
and basically,
but I thought you meant the episode. I was like, that's a really fucking weird way to talk about an episode of television. But no, you mean the bomb thing, the delta wave thing.
yeah, the delta wave is about to go off, and the bad guy kid says, "Oh, when it gets to 100%, the delta wave will go off, and 3 trillion people will die." Meanwhile, the actor playing Kid is in the back of the scene, walking across the screen like this.
It didn't bother me. I didn't know.
No,
Yeah.
I think because I was watching on a computer, I think maybe I was just that little bit closer to it. I think maybe on a big screen, you don't necessarily notice that his mouth isn't moving while the words are coming out of it. Just such a bizarre odd moment.
What we're watching?
Or maybe it's
4
deliberate.
men
And we're
waiting to
Maybe
talk
it's a
about
clue.
Susan and the Rani.
that's what I said. I want to come back to the Rani bit because I think there's a lot of stuff going on there. A lot of problems with it, maybe for various reasons. Do you want to do it now then?
My only
he's
problem
chosen-
with it was it being confined to the mid-credit sequence of an episode when it should be a real moment.
Oh no, you're missing the big point here, Luke. You're absolutely right. The problem with the reveal of who this character is coming in a mid-credit scene, that in itself is not the problem. The problem is that this is the one episode this year that might not get broadcast if the FA Cup goes into overtime, and that entire reveal will have been missed by half the audience.
People might miss it anyway. They might turn over.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It
Well,
came pretty
no, they'll be on.
quickly.
I mean, I think it's it's going to be sandwiched between a big football match and the
Eurovision,
actual Eurovision Song
True.
Contest. So you've got two sort of polar audiences.
It's
do you
literally
not?
between grandstand and jukebox jury.
Hey!
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 But do you not know about the extra time
Well,
thing?
even if
Matt?
it goes into penalties, I think they've
It's
still got a kind of 10-minute buffer.
penalties is the thing. Yeah. Extra time, it should still finish.
Yeah.
But the episode may not get broadcast. That's the point. The point I'm making is, if this episode doesn't get broadcast, half the audience misses the reveal.
To me, it's bizarre because BBC Two has a repeat that's 5 minutes longer. Why don't you just shift it if you need to? You can either shift the end of the football or you can shift Doctor Who off to the second channel. That's what's
they used to do that with EastEnders back in the day before iPlayer. Like if there was like the World Cup was on, it's like EastEnders would be on BBC Two this week, so you would shift it over to the channel, and
I've seen
It's not going to happen anyway. Crystal Palace will get battered.
I've seen
Probably,
interviews with RTD where he's actually said this adds to the, for him, this makes it slightly more exciting than it could.
Even though he's been on social media telling everyone to watch it at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. But it's RTD admitting it could go tits up. Also, I think, but I also think the other thing is, you've built up to the reveal of this character, and it's a character who fans will know, and who the general public will just go, "Who the fuck is that?"
I mean, for me, I didn't mind the reveal. My wariness is a kind of an anticipation of what the Rani's going to do, because this type of storyline that we're expecting to happen, this sort of this sort of reality warping. So the Master is the anti-Doctor in terms of morality. The Rani can't just be another Master. The Rani is basically Dr. Moreau. So the Rani, the whole distinctive thing about the Rani is she does things with biology.
She's Margaret Thatcher.
She's the mad. No, she's the mad.
She's
scientist.
Margaret Thatcher. Pip and Jane Baker are absolute commies. They write her as Margaret Thatcher.
She's the mad
biologist, and then camp bitch.
Except the emphasis is on the biology, on the science. She's the mad scientist, the amoral scientist.
Did you watch Time of the Rani, Matt?
Well, yeah.
Have you seen it? She is not anything like that, mate.
But the Thatcher,
she is. Time of the Rani's full of like genetic manipulation, and there's the insects in it, the tech
with a big stupid SF plot.
There's harnessing brain stuff. I mean, I'm not defending Time of the Rani.
If I could bring Matt and John together here just for a second, but much like an evil biologist. I do think there's a world in which the finale, I think, could do something with the Thatcher thing and the biologist thing, because we've seen in Lucky Day that she's clearly been putting together a team. Also, where do we think that white fur coat came from? Beat the Meat? I'm thinking it's Beat the Meat. So you could see, I could see the Thatcher thing. If RTD is going to talk about, the kind of the far right and the kind of fetishizing of that sort of Thatcherism and all that kind of thing, I think I think you could make the Rani work as like quite a good villain in the 2020s to talk about the kind of things.
I think absolutely. So my criticism is not really criticism; it's kind of a worry that RTD isn't going to do that, and the Rani effectively becomes the Master or missing
or Sutek,
and then
or every other one
not?
of the.
I mean, Sutek he did something different with, so I really
we didn't do anything with Sutek, did he?
Week on week, I really liked the closing bit of the last series, because Sutek's become this kind of inhabitant of the TARDIS that evolves into a god. But there has to be the Rani.
I don't think there was any evolution. I think
the Rani only works. The Rani only works
from the start.
The Rani only works if she is distinctive now from the Master, because we've had Missy. It can't just be a female Master. And I'm not sure how that's going to happen, but I'm interested to find out. And maybe, something spectacular is going to happen.
In the same way as Maestro was distinctive from the toy maker, and the toy maker was distinctive from the Master.
Yeah, but they are. But Maestro is music focused. Ring-a-Ding is...
But the personalities are all the same, right?
But it's not about the personalities. It's about their relationship with the Doctor. And the Master is, in a particular way, the kind of the Moriarty to the Doctor. He's the anti-Doctor who happens to be a Time Lord. the Rani is always the danger of the Rani has always been she just becomes the female master. And actually, Pip and Jane Baker, I despise with all my fight. I despise as much as Dylan despises Doctor Who at the moment, sort of. But at least
Mark of the Rani's great. Terror of the Vervoids is great.
Something distinctive out of the Rani.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. But I immediately liked the look of her, though. Like, there was something about her that got me excited.
And I like
about this new version.
The bi-generation creating her own companion. So there's something about when the Doctor bi-generates, they're sort of equal entities. When the Rani bi-generates, one of them becomes the sub.
So is all of the Mrs. Flood appearances we've seen so far just after this?
Well, also
before it, I don't know.
No,
is it when the Mrs. Flood Rani is retired and she's just laughing?
No, I think it's before
the 14th Doctor's still there, isn't he? He hasn't gone anywhere, so I think he's fine.
But is that? But I think that relationship flips. So Mrs. Flood becomes the sub, which is a very Rani thing to happen. If they bi-generate, then the latest one becomes the dominant, and the other one recognizes her place.
So you're saying that?
But that happens
David
in the Giggle.
Is Judy's son.
Yes, that happens in the Giggle.
No,
yes.
No, I don't think that. I think they become effectively equal because it's the Doctor bi-generating. So there's a degree of respect.
They play with balls together.
My Who Culture editor, I think, put it quite nicely, where he said, "I think I like what it does in terms of it sets up. There's a Doctor and the Doctor." But I think if you're going to set Anita Dobson up as some mysterious character, it doesn't work as well if it's the Rani and her assistant.
Well,
it doesn't have quite the same kind of. But I think that's what Russell's thinking when he writes that scene.
Practical terms, how can Anita Dobson still be a key player for those 2 episodes? Is she up to that?
Well, also, I think maybe she will be, because I don't think we've seen. So on the surface, they have a kind of sub-dom. Companion Rani, but there's something still about Mrs. Flood.
Oh no,
the fourth wall breaking. I think she's going to become a key part of being not necessarily the antagonist, but a part of the solution to defeat.
Oh yes,
the Rani.
Totally. Mrs. Flood.
I think it's going to develop and twist.
Russell T Davies has seen World Enough and Time. Mrs. Flood 100% is going to be the person who solves stuff in 2 weeks' time after she rebels against her alter ego.
Maybe by going along the timeline and breaking reality in some way, which links into the fourth wall.
Well, don't say that too loudly. RTD might be listening, and he might be writing his own.
He definitely listens to this podcast. There's no question of that.
And the thing is, I think the Rani reveal worked as well, even for a casual viewer, because they just see the Rani and go, "It's an evil time lady. Fine, I'll get on board with that."
Yeah,
it's fine. Narratively, I don't think it's a problem. Yeah, as fans, we go, they'll want to know all about it. They won't necessarily. They know enough to get by. I think it works on those levels.
Yeah, I think it works on a level of, it's a bit like the Master, but not quite. Yeah. It's another one. So
you use familiarity with the story.
But I think you've got to sell that really quickly. So when you get the Master at the end of Utopia, very, very quickly, somebody's dead, nastiness is occurring. At the end of this, you've got that weird scene where you've got 2 guys that people have been rooting for and they don't want to see them killed off. So the Ranis just kind of walk around the room a bit.
But this does kind of, to me, is every regeneration now going to be a bi-generation?
Well, you hope not, but that is the problem. But but then you do have, it's like the pocket watch, isn't it? So not every pocket watch is a chameleon arch, but because you've had a pocket watch before, then when you get to the pocket watch in Utopia, the pocket watch takes on meaning. So when the bi-generation is happening here, then you start to think, this has got to be significant and important.
In danger of upsetting Matt, Mavity may be the key here. Because while Blue Yonder, and not because of Mavity, but while Blue Yonder sets up the Toymaker's return, it's the Doctor sort of salting the earth and unleashing these kind of fantastical foes. And I think the implication of, it's not necessarily kind of made clear in the dialogue, But the implication with the giggle is that the toy maker being there has enabled bi-generation to happen.
Totally.
So we could see it as the reason the Rani bi-generates is because we're still within this kind of weird alternate sort of world where the rules don't necessarily apply. And whatever the Doctor does to save the day in the finale resets everything again, because also he probably has to regenerate soon, and Shootigat was probably not going to be sticking around for future appearances. So I think it'll be a hard and fast regeneration.
Far from being upset by that, I kind of agree. I've always agreed that, but it's the use of salt at the end of the universe that's opened the gateway to these things. I still maintain that the Newton bit just before
it's just a bit
is a start of an in-joke that won't be returned to. But
they've spent a lot of money of making that in the same episode, at either ends of the same episode.
Yeah, I think the salt is the more important bit.
It is, but Mavity is the example.
Okay.
Oh, you could still go back to Space Babies with the butler thing, because how has that changed it?
Coming back to Space Babies, because Poppy's now made an appearance 2 weeks in a row, hasn't she? So one of the Space Babies was in last week's episode, and in this week's episode, her name was all over it.
I mean, it is also a flower, but yeah.
Oh yes, but why choose the name of that flower?
I did
Yes, Oh no, you're absolutely right. It's to kind of keep it.
Good spot.
That is 100% to make sure that character is still in people's minds before next week, or that when that character turns up next week, we get a reminder of the thing.
Maybe the Rani's responsible for the Space Babies. Maybe she grew them all because she's a biologist.
Well, I tell you, I think this entire series has been the Rani sitting with the Space Babies on their spaceship as they make their final voyage to their home, telling the Space Babies stories of the Doctor who's just saved them. And so all we're seeing is the stories as she tells them. And speaking of which, Matt just mentioned, well, I say just mentioned, I've been trying to get this in for about 10 minutes. He mentioned the expression anti-Doctor. I think that would be a great... So maybe at the end of this series, Ncuti Gatwa regenerates into Miriam Margolyes, who styles herself the anti-Doctor and just spends the next 6 episodes sitting in a chair telling stories to the Space Babies. And instead of seeing it...
That's all they can afford.
Yeah!
TARDIS lands... Hey, Matt, is TARDIS can land in Avignon, maybe? It's anti-Doctor?
There we go. That's a medieval anti-Pope joke.
Excellent. Anything else we want to mention? I want to mention, I think it was genius putting a mullet on the main character. Because, all right. Sure. For reasons I don't necessarily especially want to go into, but I think that was a very good choice.
Also, if you're talking about incels, who is that actor related to?
Fox.
Yes.
Oh, is he? Oh, I didn't know that.
Freddie Fox.
Yes, Freddie Fox.
But there's so many Foxes about. It's like,
he gives such a weird performance.
I know they're raking around your bins, and that's just Lawrence Fox.
So Freddie Fox gives us such a weird performance. I couldn't work out if he was doing a great bit of acting or a terrible bit of acting, but there are lots of lines that should have been important that he kind of throws away a bit, and then he sort of gives more importance to lines that seemed less important. So there are bits of sort of like he just sort of cuts like this, and he's sort of like kind of thing, and then all of a sudden he'll come back, and it's like, yeah, okay, hang on, there was half a sentence there. Where did it go? And he gave a very strange performance, but I don't know if it was a great performance or not. What did anybody think?
I liked it. I mean, he was unhinged, wasn't he? He was going to kill 3 trillion people. Well, I like them too, to be honest. Just together.
She gave a really nuanced performance about somebody who all of a sudden, when it came to the reality of the situation, was conflicted about, oh, actually, we are killing people. It's one thing talking about killing people. It's another thing entirely actually doing it. She was really good, wasn't she?
Yeah.
I wasn't won over by Freddie Fox, I got to say. Because I think he's great in Slow Horses as this kind of really just obnoxious, like establishment figure who's kind of failed up the way. So he can play.
Where did he take inspiration for that performance from again?
Well, who can say? So he can play these kind of really sort of really good villain figures, but I think this again, it comes back to that kind of like what the themes of the episode are. I think it doesn't want the director, or maybe Juno Dawson's script, doesn't want him to go too far into outright villainy. but also isn't giving him enough to kind of humanize him. So it kind of we get this kind of slightly flat villain performance.
I'd have quite liked if they gone for Wild at Heart or Natural Born Killers on it.
I
That
think
kind of
if they
Yeah,
if they-
something like that.
if they'd
You know,
done that,
'cause
it would have slightly interfered with the fact that it's a sympathetic situation almost. So it's dealing with the
Yeah.
complexities that these people are terrorists, but the cause that they're fighting for, the Doctor is sort of should be on board with
yeah.
that. It's
But again,
just the
yeah.
methodology. So there's a complexity
It's-
there that
it's
might
about-
have complicated the
the
performance.
villain being banal kind of didn't help that the Doctor goes absolutely apeshit at the end bit
Yeah.
to me. It needs to be a big person. You know, you look at everyone he's faced down. Davros trying to destroy every reality at once, and then this guy is the one who makes him tip over the edge.
I really like Shuti
Dunno.
Gatwa in this, by the way. There have been points
Oh, he's getting
where
better and better,
where
yeah.
I haven't liked his performance, or it's sort of. But here, there's sort of a Tom Bakery-ness in it, and the gags all work. With
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
confetti
That bit-
cap.
that-
For once,
the-
he's being given like physical gags and actual jokes.
I love the confetti camp bit because you think, oh, that's
Yeah.
camp, and then he goes, yeah, oh, camp, yeah.
And then the feint was really good as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the return from the feint as well, where he sits up and goes all Tom Baker.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah, I thought he was great. Yeah.
I wonder if there was a deliberate choice made to sort of counterpoint the villain and the Doctor, because it's about like you say, was it John who said the causes are things that the Doctor maybe should believe in, but it's about how you do it, and maybe they're deliberately counterpointing the villains and the Doctor across this series. And there's a point at which, if you're looking at the nuance of it, you're supposed to think, well, the Doctor's the good guy, but sometimes he behaves like the bad guy, and the bad guys are the bad guys, but maybe the things they're fighting for are the good things. Maybe there's just this, and maybe that's a deliberate choice. Maybe that's going to come back in the next two episodes. I've no idea. And I'm going to say something now, Luke, that might sound like a spoiler, but it really isn't. But this is just based on what we've seen. But in this episode, the villain again says, I will see you again, Doctor. And we've already seen Mrs. Flood come and get the villain from Lucky Day. And so you've got potentially also the guy from, I always say that Russell T Davies, in much the same way as Moffat did when he came in after Davis, Moffat's come in after Davis has come in after Moffat and Chibnall, and he's stealing little bits of the way they do things. And I said last week, I think, or maybe the week before, that Russell T Davies has obviously seen the Missy thing and said, I can do that, where you put an old woman in at the end of every episode every week before finding out who she is at the end of the series. She was collecting souls then to turn them into Cybermen. I wonder if there might be a storyline, and I don't necessarily think it is, and I've certainly not seen any spoilers to suggest that it is, but I wonder if there's a storyline going on here where the Rani is collecting incels to fight the Doctor. That's where the series feels like it's going.
Yeah, I mean, I'd fully expect to see both Freddie Fox
Yeah.
and Conrad again
Yeah,
as part of the Rani's plan. So
And Beat
I
for
think
Me.
you.
It
Yeah,
goes
maybe
back to
the-
Mark's point about this being
Yeah.
a metaphor for the current political situation really nicely.
Oh, it
Because it's
does.
the way the right wing infosphere works.
There's a huge mirror on reality at the minute, isn't there? And
And the villains don't go away. They just because they come back. You know, it's like how many times has
yeah.
Lawrence Fox, Calvin Robinson, whoever just been defeated and they don't come back, pull the same shit exactly again. So
Okay, I suppose we should start thinking about winding it up, unless there are any major points more still to talk about. We talked about Susan a bit at the start, but we didn't actually say whether we liked seeing her.
Oh yeah, I
whether we
absolutely
thought-
loved it. I did
Yeah.
because I think it was the first surprise this season. Well, for me, I've a few things I have been spoiled on. This was the first one I did not know it was coming, and it was a proper like, even if logically it's probably not the greatest thing in the world, in the moment it still makes you go, "Fuck it, season! Wow,
Yeah.
no way."
And
So
for
it was
all
like
and for all the
last
people,
season.
I was going to say, for all that people talk about how terrible an actor she is, I thought she did a really good job of the stuff
Well,
she had
because
to
all
do.
she had to do was Doctor.
Yeah.
Wake,
So
sorry,
it
grandfather,
worked.
wake up. Oh, don't do that.
I think.
So,
I
but they
think-
wrote around her capabilities
Yeah,
and
sure.
used
Yeah,
them,
exactly that.
New Doctor Who is quite good at bringing back old actors and actually framing them in a way that doesn't expose their flaws.
Sure.
So I think it did just about work. I've got an anticipation concern, the same as the Rani, that if she does have a substantial amount to do, then maybe she won't be able to carry it off. But then I thought Tegan and Ace were really great when they came back in the Power of the Doctor. I thought they
And I
brought it
think it helped that it was a surprise because it was a fake out. That last season's fake out kind of
Yeah,
makes it, but she's not coming back. But no,
Well, some of us said, didn't they? I mean, the conversation last year was basically they faked out on Susan, and we had a conversation when we reviewed that, didn't we? So is Susan going to come back at the end of next year? Because they've made these two series. They didn't make them back to back. There was a 3 month gap in between, but they've made the two series in a sense together, a continuing storyline across both years. And we did talk about the possibility of that whole Susan thing being but then she will come back. So the fake out will actually be a fake out in itself, a sort of double fake out. And it sort of has turned out that way, hasn't it? So the Susan thing was leading to Susan after all, but the Susan twist thing was the fake out rather than vice versa.
It did feel like she was used here in the same way Barrowman's used in Fugitive.
Yeah.
Too wrong-footy about the Mrs. Flood thing. But yeah, I mean, I find Caroline Ford just quite charming. It's just charming to see her, I think.
It is
So
nice, yeah.
has anyone seen The Unleashed?
no, not
No.
yet.
No,
I enjoyed it. It's like the direct coming. So, oh yeah, these old actors, we bring them in, and you think they'll go off and do their own thing. But she was really receptive to direction.
Did they wheel her in
Funnily
like Hannibal Lecter on a kind of a tilt trolley
Yeah,
and then just propped her up? Now deliver the lines, Carol, just as written.
It was good to see her though, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that marks all three of the original team. Well, all four of the original team, actually, if you think about it, have made returns to Doctor Who in one way or another, haven't they? Now, so yeah, so Ian Chesterton is at the end of Power of the Doctor. William Hartnell obviously is in the Three Doctors. Barbara,
Meg Loss, yeah.
yeah, Meg Loss, and then this. So I mean, I suppose Susan had already made a return in the Five Doctors, but do you know what I mean? It's still, it was nice to see her again, I think. Anybody got any more points they want to raise or anything else about this episode they want to bring up? No, just
I'm excited. And I wasn't before the episode, for the finale. So it's done its job.
Yeah, I think so.
Fundamentally.
Again, though, going back to the sort of shape of the episode and the shape of the series, this is closing time again, isn't it? Where you get a story and then you get a 5-minute.
He is repeating himself,
and other people.
But he's adding interesting things to it to make it.
Well, that's it.
And it's the way he's curating the stories across the series, and it's the way that he's feeding. So last year's and this year's, there are similarities, but now you start to think, well, maybe there are reasons behind the similarities, and the variety within the similarities makes it, quite
fresh almost.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
well,
and I've been excited about it for more than a few weeks now.
But also, I think what he's doing is he's making Doctor Who stories that feel familiar, not just because they correspond with last year's, but also because most of the actual ideas that are in them are things that we've seen before across the entire history of Doctor Who. So he's making familiar Doctor Who, but he's making it about the current political situation. I don't think you can deny now that this series has essentially been about the current political situation, or what he maybe thought that current political situation might be when he was writing it 2 or 3 years ago. But we are going through this in the real life.
Yeah,
and I think that's what makes it worth it, is what I'm saying, John.
There are really elements of that in the first Promise Far Back as the first series with weapons of massive destruction, etc. But Russell has been very much more political in his writing, I think, since he left Doctor Who first time round.
Well, the first time around, he was making jokes about the current political situation, but the stories weren't about that. And here, he's making stories that are about that, and I think that makes it worthwhile.
Well, he's written years.
Absolutely.
He's written years and years now.
Well, yeah,
I think
it's a question
that's
of
quite fair.
why is Doctor Who relevant now? And this is his answer.
Yeah, for sure. Should we give it a score then? Shall we? Shall I? I'll go first, and then I'll do Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Right?
God bless you.
Okay. I'm going to give it a 9 because I think it was almost a 10, but they found things for everybody to do except the companion, which seems like a weird slip. So for me, that knocks it to a 9. It would have been a 10 if Belinda had been a bit more proactive, I think. Matt.
I think it a 10 because I agree with a lot of the minor criticisms, but I didn't
Yeah.
notice it whilst I was watching it. And I was really swept away and surprised by it because I thought this was going to be the episode I have to endure between the episodes I like and the two final parts. A bit like Bad Wolf or these sorts of things I don't generally like, but just the style that it was written in, the consistency, the jokes just made me feel like, it's just joyful.
And also, the thing about Eurovision that you probably don't get along with is the fact that it's a competition. And if you're making something that's about the competition, it's not the competition. So it's an observation of it. So what you're watching is an observation of Eurovision rather than an
Yeah,
example
it
of
is.
Eurovision.
I think you're right. It's the competition I don't like, but also the music and the presentation.
And they were actually surprisingly little of that.
The entire history of it, and the fact that I went to a Eurovision Song Contest party and it was the most excruciating thing I've ever been, and all I wanted to do was go home and just watch Don't Look Now.
Actually, you've just reminded me of something. That song at the end I thought was fantastic and gave a real emotional kick. And the pause for the clapping, that was such a cliche, and yet it worked so well. So I'm going up to a 10 for that.
Yeah, that was almost a Mulholland Drive Silencio moment for me. It was that kind of profound sort of in a foreign language thing. I'm so glad Murray Gold didn't put words to it. It was sort of Rings of Akaton, but
I've just had a thought. You're Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? But my
you're
nickname.
not Jesus.
No, my nickname, ever since I was about 21, the JR, people have called me Jesus Rises. So, I mean, it's perfect, isn't it?
God, here we go.
It's
He's
my
the
nickname.
ego.
No, people have definitely called me that. Everyone calls me that.
And you said RTD's got an ego.
Oh, Mark, you've been on Skype calls with me. Didn't you see the thing under my thing? I always said Jesus Rises because I put that in when I joined Skype and I couldn't change it. Anyway, Mark.
Couldn't.
No, I tried to change it because when I first joined Skype, I put that in and then I got spammed by lots of religious accounts.
And you've never done that joke in an Easter episode of ours.
Well, I don't think about it because it's an old nickname that I just don't use anymore. But
don't-
I've just been reminded of that because of the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John thing. Mark, give us a score out of 10.
It's a 7, I think, and you'll thank me. And no, I did enjoy quite a lot about it. It just, there's a lot of stuff that left me cold, and like I say, I just didn't really like the characterization of the Doctor. And sure, if they make something of that in the finale, maybe I'll look back on this and give it an 8. But I don't think they will. So yeah, 7.
Okay, John? No, not really. Luke?
I'm going to go for an 8. Well, I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It was very good, but it was the highlight of the season for me, though. Yeah, a real spectacle and actually really fun and thrilling and balanced everything really well. Great.
Fair enough. And John?
Yeah, I'm more with Mark in it, but I think I'll go with an 8 because it is an absolute blast of an episode. It communicates that love of Doctor Who and Eurovision and why they fit together in that same episode. But again, yeah, that bit about the Doctor and why he's suddenly going nuts at this kind of mid-range villain. Maybe you say after the finale, I will go back and up it, but yeah, 8 for me. But Carol and Eddie would give it a 10 anyway. So
fair enough.
8.
Right, we'll be back next week to go, oh, wow. And we'll be back in a fortnight to go, oh, shit. Until that happens. Until that happens, I was JR.
And I was Matt.
I was Mark.
I was Luke.
And I was John.
And we will speak again soon.